This is a WISN 12 Commitment 2022 election special.
Two Milwaukee natives vying to become the city's first new mayor in 18 years. Cavalier Johnson.
We will be safe. We will be strong. We will create more family-supporting jobs, and we will be the best city in America.
Bob Donovan.
I'm running for mayor of the city of Milwaukee. For three major reasons: safer streets, better schools, and good jobs.
Tonight, the candidates on the issues: public safety, from record homicides to curbing reckless driving and stolen vehicles, the city's fiscal crisis, COVID, and the future of MPS. This is the Upfront Commitment 2022 Milwaukee Mayoral Debate. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Adrienne Pedersen. For the first time in 18 years, Milwaukee voters will be electing a new mayor to lead them. Tonight, we welcome the candidates. Here with us tonight, Acting Mayor Cavalier Johnson and former Alderman Bob Donovan. We will be having an hour-long discussion talking all about the future of the city. First, though, I want viewers to know a little bit about you. Cavalier Johnson was born and raised in Milwaukee. He's 35, married with 3 children, and was elected 2nd District Alderman in 2016 and 2020. He served as Common Council President before becoming acting mayor when Mayor Tom Barrett stepped down last year to become a U.S. ambassador. Bob Donovan was also born and raised in Milwaukee. He's 65, married with 5 children and 11 grandchildren. He was elected 5 times as 8th District Alderman on Milwaukee's South Side and was the chair of the council's Public Safety Committee. He retired in 2020. Johnson and Donovan were the top 2 finishers in the February primary. The winner in April's election will serve the remaining 2 years of Barrett's term. Now, over the next hour, I'll be asking the candidates questions. Of course, they're free to talk to one another, but I will be managing the time and discussion. And at the end, each candidate will be asked to make a 1-minute closing statement. Throughout the debate, we'll be revealing some exclusive new poll results from the Greater Milwaukee Association of Realtors. Now, we did flip a coin to determine which candidate will get the first question. That will be Mayor Johnson. First, I want to set this up a little bit. So in the new poll, they asked residents if they think the city is on the right track or the wrong track. Let's take a look over here. 56% say the city is on the wrong track. Then if you look at the other side of this, 31% say it's headed in the right direction. But this election is providing an opportunity for change. This is a divided city. We know that. Take a look at the screen here. The Marquette Law School map of voting wards from February's primary. The wards show that Johnson is in the green and Donovan is in that yellow color. There's almost an exact line right across the city there. And I'm just interested, starting with you, Mayor Johnson, why did the results shake out like this with such a stark difference?
Well, Adrienne, first of all, thank you for having us here tonight. Really looking forward to the discussion with Alderman Donovan here. I think the line represents what we've known in Milwaukee for so long, that in this city we've had segregation. We've had people who unfortunately have lived in different neighborhoods, and I think part of that is because they haven't had access to family support and work. And when they don't have access to family support and work, they get locked into neighborhoods. And so we haven't seen that sort of integration into the neighborhoods that we would like to see. That's something that I'm looking to break down when I'm serving as mayor full time.
Alderman, why is there such a divide?
Well, if you're talking about the divide of the vote, I think that's obvious. Alderman Johnson represents a North Side district. He's well known on the North Side. I, for 20 years, represented a South Side district and certainly grew up on the South Side as he grew up on the North Side. So I think that probably plays a bigger role in the division in the votes in the primary than anything, really.
And there could be something else at play here. I want to ask you a follow-up on that, because Milwaukee is one of the most segregated cities in America. We all know that. Fewer people voted for you, Alderman, in February than the last time you ran in 2016. And you're not really getting that support from the Black community. Why aren't African-American people voting for you, and how do you get them out to the polls?
Well, first of all, I think that's changing, and I'm very pleased with some of the support we've picked up. Alderman Hamilton and his endorsement. He knows me. He knows, he's worked with me for 16 years on the Common Council. He knows the real Bob Donovan. Now, sometimes people judge others by what a 5-second soundbite on what they hear on TV or what they're told by others about a person. I would argue, though, I am an individual who is willing to work with anyone, any individual, any group, irregardless of race or ethnic background. After all, I represented a district for 20 years that was 70% minority. Probably one of Milwaukee's most diverse aldermanic districts. So I think that says a lot, to be returned to office 5 times because they got things done. And that's what this community, and I believe all of our people, irregardless of race or ethnic background, that's what they want in their local government, to get things working again.
Mayor, I'll ask you a similar question, just in a different way. I mean, you lost the south and southwest sides of the city for the most part. That has a majority of white residents. Why do you think you're not connecting with people who live on the south side?
Well, I think that we actually are. And I have been committed since day number 1 to fight for every single vote in every single neighborhood. When you break down the data from the map that you just showed, Adrian, it says that we won every single African-American majority voting ward in the city. It says that we tied at least in some Hispanic majority voting wards in the city. It says that we won more white majority wards of any other candidate in the city in the primary election. It also says that we won 12 of 15 aldermanic districts in the city. So we won wards and districts from the far northwest side all the way to the south side, all the way to Bayview. We won the east side, we won the west side. And as I said, I'm going to be fighting for every single vote in every single neighborhood, campaigning on issues that Milwaukeeans care about, no matter where you live in the city.
I want to move on to public safety and crime now. Another poll question that was asked about, by far the largest number, nearly half of residents say that crime is the most important issue that you should focus on. You both have said that this is a big priority, if not the #1 priority in your campaigns. Now, I reached out to the Milwaukee Police Department. They tell me that the homicide clearance rate for last year was 51%. If you go back a few years, it was 76%. So I want to know, as mayor, how you would hold the police chief accountable specifically when it comes to the homicide clearance rate. I mean, they're not solving almost half the homicides right now. Mayor, I'll start with you.
Crime is out of control in Milwaukee. We have too many issues with crime, right? And we need to address it in a holistic way. I talk to police all the time. I've got a great relationship with police, including with the police chief. But when you talk to police officers, they'll tell you that they can't do the job alone. We need a holistic way to address the issue of public safety here in Milwaukee. And so this is what I will do. I'll be focused on public safety by working to make sure that we have additional folks to help boost the clearance rates in Milwaukee. I'll be working to make sure that we have violence prevention in Milwaukee. I'll be working to make sure we have earlier interventions in the lives, particularly of young people in Milwaukee. I'll be working to make sure we have mental health services, because not every single incident requires somebody with a badge and a gun. It needs somebody who has those sort of background and experiences to help them. And I'll be working to address the root causes of crime that we see in our city, the root causes of violence, which is poverty. And those are things I'll be working on as mayor in order to address public safety in Milwaukee.
Do you agree with those steps? How would you try to change that homicide clearance rate?
Well, first of all, you can't expect the Milwaukee Police Department to restore safety, order, and stability to our streets and neighborhoods without first providing them with the appropriate level of manpower. The Detective Bureau alone is down 30 to 40 detectives. They can't keep up. They can't even investigate all the crimes going on in this community, and certainly the homicide rate. In addition to that, we have seen so many officers, because of low morale, leaving right the minute they hit that 25-year mark, and they can with the full pension. We've seen more leave, and this is unprecedented. So many that have left even before they've reached that point because of the morale, because we have had individuals in leadership positions that have not supported our police when they needed the support.
Who are you referring to?
Well, I'm referring to my colleague, I'm referring to Mayor Barrett, I'm referring to a lot of public officials that jumped on the bandwagon in the defund the police movement, demonized our police. They need to know that their public officials, their leaders, their bosses have their back. And I believe they do know that. For 20 years, I was Mr. Public Safety. I stood up and called out our previous administration for leading the charge on reduction in manpower. My colleague, every year he's been, or my opponent, I should say, every year he's been on the council, he has voted to reduce police manpower. We have essentially gutted the department by hundreds and hundreds of positions.
I do want to give you a chance to respond to that.
Yeah, and I would also say, yes, we do need a holistic approach. We do need to have crime prevention efforts, without a doubt. I wholeheartedly support that. But we need to also ensure that who we're funding, the agencies that we're funding, are reporting back to us and making progress. We haven't seen that or heard from the Office of Violence Prevention on any of those things. Nobody can tell me what they've really accomplished. Yet we're pouring millions and millions more into that office. I want to support agencies that have earned and have worked hard and have accomplished things. We've got to do that with money so tight. We cannot afford to send good money after bad.
Well, and we'll dig into a lot of this over the next hour, but Mayor, I do want to give you a chance to respond to that. I mean, he was saying that you don't support the police.
I appreciate having the opportunity to respond to that, because that is 100% false. As a matter of fact, under my leadership, when I was serving as council president before going into the mayor's office, I championed a federal cops hiring grant that was really controversial at first. It failed initially at the council, but I worked behind the scenes with members. I even employed a number of people to help encourage council members to pass it. Even though Bob Donovan is my opponent right now in the race for mayor, I called him. And I said, Bob, we care about this issue of public safety. Can you help me? And I'm glad.
Thanks for telling the truth on that.
And I'm glad that he did. I never, it's funny that he says, I haven't lied about it, right? The thing here is that I was a leader, and as a leader, you have to get things done. And so sometimes you have to cross the aisle. I did, and the result is that we were successful in getting the CAPS grant passed. So today, right now, there are 26 people, 26 police officers who swore the oath to protect and serve the people of Milwaukee. And they largely live in the city. They're African American, they're Asian, they're Hispanic, they're men, they're women. And they're protecting and serving the city right now. Bob Donovan, over the course of the last 20 years, he called himself Mr. Public Safety. And I understand that Bob has a genuine desire to care for the people who protect and serve our city. I don't doubt that. But the problem that I have here, Bob, is your willingness to fund them. You say that I have voted to not fund the police department. When you pass budgets and when you vote on budgets, you're either funding a department or you're not funding a department. You're either putting money into a department or you're defunding that department. And I voted to fund the police. I just did that last year when I put forward funding to make sure that it was there to bring on 195 additional officers. And I'll say this as well, that Bob, you pounded your fist on the table for 20 years. Trying to get to 2,000 police officers. You weren't able to bring the council together. How can you get to 2,000 officers? You can't even get the council to 8 members. You can't even get 8 votes.
I'll let you respond to that before we move on.
Absolutely. Now, let me tell you this. You need to start telling the truth to the citizens of Milwaukee. You have an obligation, and you're misleading them with this characterization that you're somehow adding 200 officers to our streets this year. That is absolutely absurd. You know it. I know it. The rest of our colleagues knows it, and half the city knows it. The reality is this: you don't even have 100 recruits to fill into that class of 200 or those 3 classes of 200. In addition to that, Cavalier, you know it. You need to start telling the truth. You know that they have to go through a background check. They have to go through testing that takes months and months and months. Physical test, a written test, a psychological test, a background check. There is no way that 200 cops are going to be added to our streets this year, and that's the impression in your commercials that you've left. That is a mischaracterization. You know it. Every year you've been an alderman, you have voted to reduce police manpower. I have voted against those budgets because of precisely that. It cut police manpower. I'm not looking for huge amounts of officers. I have never, and look at my public safety plan, it is so comprehensive, it even shows how we can pay for things, which certainly your plan doesn't. Having said that, my plan is comprehensive and addresses a variety of things, goes well beyond just police. You know and I know that I have said so many more things with public safety than just cops.
Final word on this, and then I want to move on to reckless driving.
Yeah, the plan that Alderman Donovan touts is from 2016. It's not been updated. In fact, it's not really even his own plan. It's a plan that was passed by the Public Safety Committee, and certainly he was chair, but that's the Public Safety Committee's plan. We put forward plans for today, right now, to address public safety in Milwaukee in 2022, not from half a decade ago. So Alderman Donovan's claim that, he's got this great master plan on public safety, it just isn't true. It just isn't true. And
let's move on to reckless driving, because that is another huge issue in Milwaukee. It has to do with police officers, has to do with crime. We talk about reckless driving all the time, but I really want both of you and the viewers at home to see it in action. So let's go ahead and watch this story here from Matt Smith.
Right here at Congress in Fond du Lac just days ago, one of the most recent deadly crashes, a reckless driver killing a 43-year-old mother of two.
A debris field of car parts and glass litters the street at Congress in Fond du Lac.
Police saying speed a factor. A 22-year-old hitting and killing 43-year-old Dwanetta Thomas.
This was somebody completely disregarding the laws and the rules of the road.
The images from streetcar racing zooming past a school bus to a crash to outside MPS schools.
No!
And the first-hand accounts.
I am extremely angry. I am so angry right now. I've never even been this. I ain't been this angry over the person who killed my son. But somebody intentionally trying to use a vehicle as a weapon.
Just more than a year ago, MPD launched its traffic safety unit, issuing more than 11,000 speeding citations. The problem persists, and it's sometimes deadly. Alongside that, the epidemic of stolen vehicles. In Milwaukee so far this year alone, MPD reports nearly 1,800 auto thefts. Adrian?
So we just saw in Matt's story there, and I think it sums up the way a lot of people in Milwaukee feel. They're fed up with this reckless driving problem. Both of you have been in city government for years now. So, Alderman, how do you crack down and stop this? Obviously, the police are trying. We saw that. There have been so many plans on reckless driving rolled out, and it hasn't worked.
Yeah, I would say you're absolutely right. First of all, reckless driving is nothing new. What's new is how terribly it has gotten out of control in the last 2 years. I might add the 2 years that my opponent has been the second most powerful man in Milwaukee and has really offered nothing in that vein. Having said that, reckless driving is a symptom of a larger problem we have in Milwaukee, an atmosphere of lawlessness, a criminal element, young kids that feel that there are no consequences for their criminal behavior to drive as crazy as they are. And in a lot of cases, they're right. They are not held accountable. So, and you talked about the traffic enforcement unit. It's my understanding this has just recently been cut in half. So we're down to 20 officers from 40 that were involved. You could have 20 traffic cops covering two aldermanic districts. You know, that's just not enough.
You want more police?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have to. And again, we've eliminated these positions, hundreds that we've cut over the years. We are reaping what we've sown. The reality is our leaders have led us into the hole that we're in now. And so some significant changes need to be made.
Mayor, what's your answer?
Well, first of all, for Alderman Donovan to say that I've done nothing on reckless driving is, again, false. As a matter of fact, I was a part of a group of council members, perhaps Bob may remember this, I think he was on the council at the time, when we pushed the former police chief, Ed Flynn, with the Fire and Police Commission to change the pursuit policy on these vehicles. Because I agree that when you don't nip this sort of stuff in the bud, then it gets out of hand. And for 7 years, for 7 long years, before I even got to the Common Council, when my opponent, Bob, was sitting there, probably even as public safety chair, these issues started going out of control because that policy was lifted. And when that policy is lifted and folks think that they can drive with impunity on the road, this is what you get. When I talk to police officers, which I have over the years, especially those officers in that area that Matt was in your segment, Police District number 7 and Police District number 4 that had the overlap with the 2nd District that I represented, they would tell me that they would come to red lights and folks would pull up on the side of them. They would literally flip them off with a hand gesture and then proceed to go through the light. And the police felt demoralized because they couldn't do anything about it. They knew these folks were jeopardizing public safety, but their hands were tied because of that policy. But I worked with my colleagues on the Common Council in order to get more latitude for the police to be able to pursue folks who were doing that. Not only that, but I've also released a comprehensive plan to tackle the issue of reckless driving called Stand for Safer Streets. And a key component of that is changing the environment, changing the physical environment to inhibit folks from being able to drive recklessly in the first place. We announced just a few weeks ago $8 million that we'll be investing across the city in areas where we have problems with reckless driving to address that very issue, including in the area where Matt just was.
Mayor, yes or no to red light cameras?
Yes. As a matter of fact, the first piece of legislation that I tried to get enacted when I came into the council was that. I then found out that, unfortunately, the city of Milwaukee, local governments in Wisconsin generally, cannot simply put those cameras into place on their own. We need permission from state government in order to do that. So that's part of the city's legislative package. We did that. Bob, perhaps you may remember that there was a press conference in the rotunda of City Hall that had members across the city, members of the Common Council from across the city there advocating it, from as far south as you can go with Alderman Witkowski at the time to as far north in the city as you can go. I was there. I spoke at it. I was in favor of it because I want to do stuff on reckless driving.
Alderman, what about yes or no for red light cameras? I know in the past you've been skeptical.
I remain skeptical only because studies have shown in other communities they have not been successful as everyone thinks they might be. They have actually caused more accidents. That's interesting, isn't it? And they are often used as a way to generate funds by sending a ticket in the mail if you happen to hit an intersection and when it's yellow and so on and so forth. The people paying those tickets are the ones who abide by the law to begin with. The jokers that are recklessly driving our streets, behaving like maniacs, don't give a darn about a ticket coming in the mail. They'll tear up a ticket a cop gives them. So, yes, we need to think a little more about red light cameras and how successful they will actually be if they are implemented.
I want to ask you a question about COVID, Alderman. COVID case numbers and hospitalizations are dropping right now across the state, but there is a case spike going on in Europe. There's some concern in China. Right now, Milwaukee city workers are required to get vaccinated. If you become mayor, would you keep that requirement?
No, I would lift that. I think a decision like that is best left between the individual and their doctor. Having said that, I think what we have witnessed over the last 2 years, sadly, is a lot of people losing faith in government and public health because they were getting so many mixed signals from government, from health departments and so on. You got to do this. No, we've changed it. Now you've got to do that. I know there are serious concerns about the mask mandates and for our kids and schools. All of these things concern me. We are in an endemic now. We certainly need to monitor what's going on across the globe with any variants. But at this point, we need to move on with our life. We need to trust our people. We need to give them the best health information available. As mayor, one of the things that I would do is create a medical advisory board consisting of doctors and nurses and health professionals to work in conjunction with the health department, but to get the best advice possible to move our city forward. So that would be my position on it.
Mayor, would you keep a vaccine mandate for Milwaukee City workers?
Well, first of all, the city already does have a Board of Health. Yes, I would keep the vaccine mandate in place because, listen, talk about losing faith in government. I would imagine that folks would tremendously lose faith in government if they or a loved one contracted COVID and were hospitalized or even died because they encountered a city worker who didn't take those precautions, right? We do this because we deliver services to the people of Milwaukee, and their safety, public safety generally, should be at the top of mind. And so if somebody is going out into the field and they're interacting with a member of the public, they should be vaccinated. They should be safe so that they don't, or they're less likely to spread this deadly disease to members of our public. That's a common sense approach to make sure that we're protecting not just our employees, but the people that we serve in the city. So yes, I absolutely would keep it in place.
When it comes to Milwaukee public schools, that's another issue that voters care about. And when we look at how the city grades Milwaukee public schools, it's not good. So let's take a look. When asked to grade Milwaukee public schools, nearly 75% gave either a C, D, or F. Just 1 in 5 gave MPS an A or a B. There have been several proposals out there involving Milwaukee public schools. As you both know, the governor just vetoed a bill that would have dissolved the district and expanded access to school choice. So I want to know from both of you if you support a proposal that gives the mayor more control over MPS. I'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And of the bill that was before the legislature and that the governor vetoed, no, I didn't support it. And I didn't support it for a number of reasons. Look, I'm an MPS graduate. I went to MPS from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. I graduated from Bayview High School after attending Daniel Webster Middle School and 6 different elementary schools in MPS before that. I'm a father of a student in MPS right now, a 6th grader. And I've got 2 other kids who this fall will be in K4, also in Milwaukee Public Schools. And I'm sitting in the mayor's office presently. In none of those capacities, as an MPS graduate myself, as a father of a student and soon-to-be students in the district, and as mayor, was I consulted about this bill. You know, I think it's...
Should the mayor have more control over MPS, though?
I think that what we ought to be doing is working to make sure in Milwaukee that we tackle the issues that are important around the school. That's, to me, that's what a mayor can do best in, is working to make sure that around the school, before a young person even enters the school building in the first place, that they're in the best position to succeed academically. So we should be working to make sure that we eliminate the trauma. We should be working to make sure that they're not hungry before they enter the classroom. We should be working to make sure that they come from families that are stable because their parents have access to family supporting jobs. That's what I want to see. The city's got a lot of issues that we're concerned with right now. A ton of issues that are going to be coming to a head very, very soon. I want to focus on those issues, allow the democratically elected school board to focus on education, and do my job as mayor to affect all the things on the outside, because it's more than just Milwaukee Public Schools that the mayor has to be worried about in terms of students. We have to be a mayor for all the kids in the city, no matter what school they go to.
Alderman, do you think the mayor should have a bigger hand in MPS going forward?
I think it's absolutely critical for the future of any community that our schools perform at top level. All of our schools, public schools, private schools, charter schools.
Is the mayor the way to do that?
I do support the mayor having more involvement in our schools. It is so critical to the future of this community. You cannot have a great city without great schools. And I was so disappointed in previous Mayor Barrett and his unwillingness to get involved in schools and education to any extent. That hurt this community. We need to do better. all of our schools. As mayor, I would want to take an active role. I would want to work with the superintendent, the school board. I would want to work with our charter schools, our Catholic schools, our private schools. Without a doubt, it's absolutely critical. So yes, I think it's very important.
But is that something you'd want to see in legislation?
And I do not necessarily support what Senator Darling has come out with. I was not involved in that those discussions. But I do feel that we need to do better. And I would certainly be open. I think everything needs to be on the table to ensure that our schools are performing at a high level for all of our kids, for their sake and their future, the future of them and this community.
Do you want to see Milwaukee police back in schools?
Yes, I don't think they should have been taken out of our schools. But again, a lot of politicians at that time sway with the wind, okay, whichever way the prevailing wind, and at that time it was the anti-police movement. For Pete's sake, we need a man in the mayor's office who has the courage of his convictions, who is not going to blow with the wind. Yes, we need those resource officers back in our schools, connecting with our kids. And on top of that, as mayor, I would want to bring back a program we called STOP. It was an excellent program. Students talking it over with police. It was a great way for kids to connect with officers. Oftentimes, they're only run-in with the police officers in a negative vein. This was a positive vein. It got awards from the White House. It got awards around the country. Why it was ended, I don't know. But we need programs like that.
Mayor, do you want to see Milwaukee police back in Milwaukee Public Schools?
First of all, I'll say that STOP was a pretty incredible program from my involvement with it in years past. This is my view. Police don't necessarily need to be in the school building. They don't need to be watching over kids while they're eating their lunch. They don't need to be posted up at their locker when they're getting their books. I have said, and I think I'm on record here, that it would be useful to have a police presence outside of schools, on school grounds, at the end of the day, because that's when things typically start going off with kids. When you played the clips earlier about reckless driving activity on school grounds, it happened after school. So it'd be very useful, I think, for the MPS school board, the district, to have a better relationship with police, to welcome them back in, especially on the outside of school when those sort of incidents are more likely to take place. That's what I'd like to see.
Let's move on to the pension, because it's not an exaggeration to say that the city is facing a pension crisis that is really going to come to a head in the next few months. I know you both have talked a lot about the pension, but to set up this complex problem, I want to bring in Matt Smith again and listen to this story.
This issue is so intertwined with public safety. Police and fire personnel make up a vast majority of the city's total pension costs, and those costs are exploding to unattainable levels. The 19-page report this past fall was pretty direct and pretty dire. If no fixes found, nearly a quarter of the city's workforce could be cut by 2025, impacting seemingly every city service in Milwaukee. Last year, former Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett created a task force to address the crisis. And next year, in 2023, the city's yearly contribution is expected to dramatically spike from $71 million to $130 million a year. And with no new revenue options, balancing the city's checkbook becomes even more problematic. And the new mayor is going to play a big part in this, not just from his new budget proposals, but immediately finding new and innovative solutions. Adrian?
Matt said it, new and innovative solutions. Alderman, how do you fix this?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned new and innovative solutions. First of all, as mayor, one of the first things that I would require is an audit of every one of our single city departments. Also, the agencies that we fund. We have an obligation to show that we're spending every penny wisely. Second of all, I believe that we need to take this fiscal crisis and turn it into an opportunity to reimagine just how we provide the services to our constituents and how we pay for local government, to essentially reimagine local government. I believe that opportunity exists.
What does that mean?
Well, we look at every department. Are there possibilities in merging these departments or consolidating with other departments, even with our suburban counterparts? Just because we've been providing a service for 50 years, do we need to provide it now? Is it as needed as it was then? We need to take a look at all of those things, and I believe there are opportunities for us to save money. Beyond that, it is absolutely essential that we work in partnership with the state of Wisconsin to address our fiscal crisis. Without that partnership, I don't see a meaningful way for Milwaukee to get ahead of the game.
I'm curious, which candidate for governor do you think you could work best with?
Well, I certainly know I can work with either both of them, really. If you're talking about the Republican candidates for governor, or you're talking about Governor Evers.
And so you're referring to, I'm guessing, Clayfish and Nicholson when you say that you could work with all of them. Yeah. Is there anyone who you've talked to more that you prefer?
No, I'm confident I can work with both, but I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the challenges that Milwaukee has been facing a long time is the inability to work with the Republicans in the state legislature. Now, if you want to get something done, you've got to work with the people who are in charge. And I fear that the partisanship that some of our elected officials in Milwaukee have played over the years has hurt that relationship, and we're seeing the results of that. Quite frankly, they were very unwilling to work with Mayor Barrett for a variety of reasons. First of all, they viewed his priorities as not their priorities. So having said that, just that partisanship, we're nonpartisan at the local level. That's for a reason, to be able to work with both parties to move our city forward. So I think we need to look at that closely and re-examine how we approach the legislature.
And I'll ask you about that as well, Mayor, but first I want to go back to the pension. How do we fix it?
Well, Adrian, you know, there's $30 million additional in the pension reserve fund today due to my leadership. When we received the initial tranche, $197.1 million in American Rescue Plan Act funding, I got the votes together on the Common Council, and we put $30 million more into that system so that we could stave off the dire financial consequences that the city would face over the course of the next year. And I was happy to do that because I understand the fiscal problems that the city of Milwaukee has and the impacts it would have on our workforce and service delivery to the people who live here in the city of Milwaukee, our visitors and commuters who expect and deserve those services. The bottom line is this. If we don't have a better relationship with the state, Milwaukee is going to be in for a world of hurt. That's why over the course of the time that I've been campaigning for this office, and even before, when I served as Common Council president, I knew, and I do know, that it's important to rebuild those relationships. And I said I'm going to have a cot in the Capitol working to rebuild those relationships. On the question of working with folks of opposing parties, look, I'm a political realist. I get along great with Governor Tony Evers. I do. But I also understand that the Republicans control the legislature in both houses, and they're likely to control it for the foreseeable future. And so in order to get things done, you got to be able to work with them. You got to be able to open up a dialogue. You got to be able to go there and have a conversation. And since I've been in this position, I've lived up to what I said about having a cot in the Capitol. I talk to Republicans on an almost daily basis. I've been to the Capitol, having conversations with Speaker Voss and other legislators. I will continue to do that, and we will rebuild those relationships so that we can move Milwaukee forward.
I would just like to say, if I could, please, I don't have to rebuild relationships. I've got good relationships with the leaders in Madison.
Alderman Donovan said he's got good relationships with leaders in Madison. He's been on the council for 20 years. 20 years. These problems that we have facing Milwaukee, they're not new. The financial problems facing Milwaukee didn't just spring up yesterday or in the last 2 years. These problems have been going on for some time. Our shared revenue problem has been persistent for 20 years, where it's been going down and been flat. and he's got these great relationships, and he's failed to use them to help the city of Milwaukee. So he says he doesn't have to rebuild the relationships, but he's failed to use those relationships.
Because of Mayor Barrett and his position on things, that is the difference. And to say that an alderman, one of 15 aldermen, has the same clout as the mayor, you know better than that. One more example of you trying to deceive the public.
Listen, when I was on the council in this last year, I didn't worry about Mayor I saw a problem and I addressed it, right? I didn't wait for I didn't wait for the legislature to do something. There was a problem, and because I'm a leader, I went to address it. I didn't use my relationships and go sit on my thumbs and pound my fist on the table and then vote no on things just because I didn't get my way. I went to address those problems, unlike Bob. So I will be rebuilding those relationships. I will be taking the city forward, and I will be having that cot in the Capitol, working with Republican leaders across the state in order to address the problems here that we have in Milwaukee fiscally. Milwaukee is a value added to the state of Wisconsin. It really is. And that's a picture that we need to paint for the legislature. And I believe that I'm the man to do it. And when we do that, we'll have the resources that we need to stave off these devastating cuts and put Milwaukee on the path towards prosperity for everybody.
Let's talk about Michael Gableman's election investigation. His review of the 2020 election will continue through at least the end of April. So I think I should ask you both, do you believe that the city of Milwaukee had a free and fair election?
Well, I'm concerned about all of the accusations that have come forward. We have an obligation, certainly as mayor at the local level, to ensure that everything, absolutely everything, is above board, beyond reproach, and yet it seems for the last many years now, every election that we've held, there have been questions that arise about issues and so on and so forth. That needs to be addressed. So we have an obligation at the local level to ensure for the well-being of our community and to ensure to all of our residents that, yes, every election is above board. There is absolutely no cheating going on, and we're delivering what the voters, the will of the voters. So I have concerns about a lot of things that have gone on and the issues that have been raised.
Mayor?
That, I think, is troubling. Look, at a previous candidate forum that we had, Bob Donovan called the experts on COVID-19, the professionals, he called them so-called experts. Now he won't even admit, now he won't even say if we had a fair and transparent election in Milwaukee. That's troubling to me. That's troubling to me as the mayor of the city right now and as a person who lives, resides, and is raising kids in a majority-minority city. I don't think that's right. I can answer that question for you with a simple answer, and that's yes, absolutely, 100%. We had a fair election in Milwaukee. I know, because I rolled up my sleeves and I went to Central Count on election night to help the Election Commission and to help all the people who came together to process all those ballots that we had to use during a pandemic. We worked to bring in a new election commissioner to preside over a consequential presidential election in the middle of a pandemic. And they did a great job, and they counted every vote, and they did it fairly.
Would you keep Claire Woodall-Vogt as the election commission?
Absolutely. I think she did a fabulous job administering a difficult election in a pandemic, and she did it fair. She did it fairly, she did it transparently, and she did it above board. And I think the mayor of this city has to be able to admit that, has to be able to say that. And Bob just wouldn't admit to that. That, I think, is troubling.
Do you believe there was widespread fraud, Alderman? I'm just trying to get to the crux of what you're saying.
I don't know why he's making that accusation of me. I'm simply saying that in this last election, there seemed to be legitimate concerns raised by a lot of different people. If that hadn't occurred, there wouldn't be Gableman and the investigation going on. That concerns me because we have an obligation to ensure that nothing like that comes forward, that accusations are just unfounded. Yet in his reports, there seems to be some serious things. I'm not necessarily saying right here in Milwaukee, but there are some issues that have been raised. So the point I'm making is we have to ensure that none of those issues come up again, that we have the best well-run elections that we possibly can.
Mayor Barrett appointed Claire Woodall-Vogt as executive director to the Election Commission. Would you keep her in that position? The mayor said yes.
I have absolutely no reason at this point to remove her. I haven't sat down and met with her or talked to her. So, you know, it's difficult to say at this point, but I see no reason why I wouldn't keep her.
With the city attorney's office, that's been plagued with problems since Chairman Spencer was elected, from staff leaving to allegations of sexual harassment. We want to go ahead and bring in Matt another time to sort of set the scene for us.
Some calls for City Attorney Chairman Spencer to be removed from office continue as he remains defiant and more experienced attorneys inside that office quit. Some 24 attorneys have left, some speaking out publicly this past year.
This is not an environment that I would recommend anyone walk into at this point.
Some writing calling for the city attorney's removal.
Dissatisfaction with the work atmosphere certainly was never there before.
Chairman Spencer hasn't wanted to talk much about the accusations of a hostile work environment or sexual harassment.
Again, that's not an issue for discussion here. We're here.
Why not?
That's not an issue for discussion here.
Dodging questions for months about his ability to handle critical issues amidst the upheaval. How are the issues in your office not related to the ability to handle this case and the workload? How are those two not intertwined?
Have a good day.
The state statute says the Common Council can remove an elected official for cause with a 3/4 vote. The mayor only having the power to suspend an official if the council opened an investigation. Spencer was first elected in 2020. If he runs again, he'll face re-election in 2 years. Adrian?
So I'll ask you first, Alderman, do you have confidence in Chairman Spencer?
I have concerns, and I've met with Tierman. I think he's a nice gentleman in our brief meetings. Having said that, certainly it concerns me. All of these accusations, they do need to be investigated. We have an obligation to ensure that our employees are working in the appropriate environments and that our staff, that our department heads are doing everything, absolutely everything above board and so on. So I will say this, I have concerns about the allegations that are being made. I'm glad they're being investigated, so that ought to concern really all of our citizens. I recall a city attorney's office that, for the most part, I think ran rather smoothly for many years under his predecessor. In a short period of time, we've seen some serious allegations, some serious concerns.
Should the Common Council put his job up for a vote?
At this point, I think it is something to consider if these allegations are proven, certainly, yeah.
Mayor, what do you think? Do you have confidence in Chairman Spencer?
Look, the issues around the city attorney's office have been immensely troubling. They really, really have. I mean, even now, right, with the position of the city attorney's office and so many people, so many talented, dedicated, committed attorneys who have started and continued careers, long careers in that office serving the city, leaving in droves. That's very troubling, and it puts the city in a precarious position because the city attorney's office represents the corporate entity of the city of Milwaukee. So this mass exodus of employees from the city attorney's office is very troubling to me, certainly.
Should the Common Council put this up for a vote, or would you consider suspending him?
I want to see, additional investigations happen here. Look, the people of Milwaukee voted for Chairman Spencer. And I believe that our voters are very smart, and their voters are paying attention. They're not just paying attention to this race right now that is historic and important. They're also paying attention to the daily happenings in government. They're paying attention to what's happening in the city attorney's office. And so I think that our voters will be the ultimate solution, the ultimate antidote to what happens.
Alderman, the city's paid more than $40 million over the past decade on police misconduct settlements. What does that tell you about the Milwaukee Police Department?
Well, it concerns me certainly, and it ought to concern all of our taxpayers. Although I will tell you, in some of those, I voted against some of those settlements. I think that they should have gone to court and have our day in court. Having said that, it's oftentimes a recommendation of the city attorney's office. Well, typically that's what the council goes with, the fear that if we lose the case, we're going to be paying much, much more. As mayor, I would want our officers to know that I would judge differently honest mistakes from willful misconduct.
I've heard you say that. So what does that mean?
I would come down hard, and I mean hard, on willful misconduct of officers. We expect that they do their job, they do it effectively and efficiently, and that they are honest and above board. If they're not, they need to be dealt with. But any human being can make a mistake. And we expect of our officers sometimes split-second decisions that it would take attorneys and courts months to figure out, was that the right call or not? We are oftentimes, sometimes led by our elected officials, our politicians, who condemn the police without even getting the facts in, without even conducting an investigation. That's not appropriate. We need to give our officers the benefit of the doubt because they have earned it, in my estimation. They are working in one of the most dangerous jobs in America, most especially in 2022. They are spat upon, they're sworn at, and they have their bosses tell them, restrain, behave, just don't do anything about it. That's not appropriate. If somebody assaults an officer, they need to be held accountable.
Mayor, what do you think about these payouts, $40 million over the past decade for police misconduct?
Look, as I have said before, we have public safety issues in Milwaukee, but they're not insurmountable. We need holistic public safety in Milwaukee, and that also includes reforms to the police department, some of which I led as a member of the Common Council. Policing in Milwaukee should be fair. It should be impartial. It should be constitutional. It should be community-oriented. That's the sort of policing that I want to see. I think it's certainly the direction that the chief of police that we have now, Jeffrey Norman, wants to go in as well. That's what I support. That's what I want to see. So it isn't as if there haven't been problems in the police department. We're working to address those problems, and the Fire and Police Commission are going to be our partners to address those problems with reforms to the department and their standard operating procedures as well, so that when they do go and interact with the people that they protect and serve in Milwaukee, that they do meet that standard that I just laid out. Policing that is fair, that is impartial, that's constitutional, that's community oriented, so we don't see incidences where we have these settlements that are before us.
I want to shake it up a little bit at the end here and do what we like to call a lightning round. So I'll ask you these topics. Quicker answers, the better, I would say. So the first one I want to start with is, should Milwaukee extend the HOP, Alderman?
Not without a referendum.
What do you think, Mayor?
It's an economic development tool that's sprung up millions of dollars worth of investment in Milwaukee, yes.
All right. RNC, do you think any local officials could get in the way of bringing the RNC to Milwaukee, especially at a time when it's very partisan, Mayor?
My hope is that no, but I think the RNC should come to Milwaukee. I'm working on it right now.
What do you think?
I would agree wholeheartedly. We need the RNC to come here, and I would certainly hope that all of our elected officials would support that.
When we look at downtowns with the pandemics across the country, there's concern that some downtowns could become ghost towns because people aren't going to work every day. A lot of people are working from home. So I'm curious your approach to try to keep downtown Milwaukee vibrant, and is that a priority to you?
Well, I would start with City Hall. You talk about a ghost town. We don't even have aldermen who show up for work. Half that city is empty because we've allowed everyone to work from home. We need to bring them back to City Hall and get this city working again. So I would look at our City Hall leading the charge in attracting and leading those businesses to bring their employees back downtown.
And how important is it to you to make sure that downtown stays vibrant and that there aren't just empty office buildings everywhere, and yet let people work from home if they want to? How do you do that? It's incredibly important that in this day and age that we provide flexibility for workers, especially for women who many times are pushed out of the workforce, right? And I want to see that. I think that's attractive to talent as we seek to attract and retain talent, not just to the city government service, but also in private business as well. It's also important to make sure that there are bodies in offices downtown helping to keep dynamism and activity happening and to support the local economy downtown and throughout our neighborhoods. I just hosted the first in-person cabinet meeting in 2 years, right in the City Hall complex, sending a message to the city government workers and to leaders downtown in business that we're back and we're bringing employees back. It's important. Let's go ahead and...
What took you 3 months to do that? Get your cabinet together. Do you want to respond?
Certainly, I can respond. It's a thing called the pandemic that we've been going through for the past 2 years. And listen, brother. He says, brother, listen, I listen to science, right? That's what guides me. Alderman Donovan's approach to the pandemic is whether or not he wants to see somebody smile under their mask. I listen to the professionals. I don't call them so-called professionals. I listen to their advice and to their guidance, and that's how it's gotten us here at this table in person, unmasked. And so that's how I approach things. And so I will be bringing the employees back. As I said, I hosted the first in-person cabinet meeting, and we'll continue to do that in the future here as well.
Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because that's ridiculous. He should have had these people together in a room. By God, Cavalier.
We were meeting, Bob.
You can do, yeah, you're meeting, yeah, Zoom, wonderful invention. Let me tell you, we've got to get this city working. It's either you or me that's going to be the next mayor. I am committed to getting people back to City Hall and start responding to people's calls that are coming in there. They never hear from their elected officials, for Pete's sake. No, we need to get our department heads. You should have been meeting. Well, I could go on and on.
Bob was elected for 20 years. He knows full well that council members are independently elected and the mayor cannot compel them to come to City Hall.
That's true. That's true. But who can pressure them is their constituents if they'd answer the phone there and would come in. And the bully pulpit that the mayor has is second only to the governor. He needs to get up there and call them out. You get back into work here.
All right, Alderman
because
and Mayor.
You can't get it done.
Alderman and Mayor, I hate to cut you off, but we need to go to our closing statements now. So you will each have 1 minute. We did flip a coin to determine the order. And first, we'll go ahead and hear from Mayor Johnson. 1 minute. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much, Adrian. I really appreciate having the opportunity to come here to speak with you. I had the appreciate having the opportunity to join Milwaukeeans via this way over television to talk about Milwaukee's future. As I travel the city and talk to Milwaukeeans, folks are concerned. They think that Milwaukee's got a ton of potential, and we want to see that potential realized. But they know that we can't do it unless we have a city that is safer, that is stronger, and that's more prosperous for everybody. They want a city that addresses issues at their roots so that we can create an environment teeming with safety for our families, growth for our businesses, family supporting opportunities for our residents, and stability in our neighborhoods. If we do those things together, then we can have the most livable big city in America. And that's exactly what I'm looking to do as mayor. And I've got the vision in order to get it done. It requires a 21st century economy. It requires us to have a new line of sight into public safety. It requires us to work to build family supporting jobs in our neighborhoods. That's the sort of mayor that I'm going to be fighting for every neighborhood and every person throughout Milwaukee. Thank you, and vote for me on April 5th.
All right, Alderman Donovan, I would like to give you the same opportunity, so you have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Great, thanks. I would say this, folks. April 5th is decision day in the city of Milwaukee. Do we continue down the same old path, electing more of the same kinds of people, the same people that got us into this mess in the first place, or do we go in a different direction, a better direction? I would say for 20 years, I served the citizens of Milwaukee as alderman of the 8th District. I stood up and fought for their best interests because that was my job. As mayor, I'll fight for all of us. I worked with the private sector, the faith community, and I got things done and developed a reputation of getting things done. That is precisely what we need in the mayor's office at this point in time. Milwaukee's a great community, has many great amenities. We need to accentuate our positive and eliminate our negative. I'm asking for your vote on April 5th. Help me make Milwaukee reach its full potential as the best city in America. Thank you.
All right, with that, our time is up for the night. So I want to say thank you to both of the candidates for joining us here. It's so important for the voters to hear directly from you. And thank you to everyone who's been watching us at home tonight. I'm Adrienne Pedersen. Have a good night. And of course, remember to get out there and vote on April 5th.